Hey everyone, today's video is going to be about debt to income ratios. What is it? Why is it important? And how is it calculated? So, number one, what is a debt to income ratio? Debt to income ratio is one of the considerations lenders look at when they're pre-approving you and approving you for your mortgage. It gives us a good idea of how much monthly obligations do you currently have in relation to your income. It's a good indicator of can you afford this home or not. So it's important for that reason. Depending on the type of loan you're getting and applying for, there's different maximum debt to income ratios that get used. For example, some of the more restrictive debt to income ratios come on jumbo mortgages. And with these loans, you really want to be below 43% with most programs. There are some that go a little higher, some that go a little lower, but 43% is probably the most common max debt to income ratio for a jumbo loan. Conventional loans can typically go up to about 50% in a lot of cases. FHA loans can go even higher, up to 55%. And then veteran loans for the VA loans can go up into the 60s in some cases. It also depends on your credit profile, and in some cases you're approved for less than the maximum given a certain program. So there's no one set number, but just to give you an idea, there is a pretty big range depending on the type of loan you're applying for. And of course, your loan officer will be here to set your debt ratio and see what you're approved for and help you calculate how much you're pre-approved for. So that's what it is and why it's important. How does it get calculated? So, credit reports and people's monthly mortgage payments are always thought of on obviously a monthly basis, right? So where we have easy access to your monthly obligations, we convert the debt to income ratio as a monthly number. So if you know your annual income, we take that, divide it by 12 to get the monthly amount. When calculating how much income do I use for my qualifying income on my debt ratio, it's always your gross income. So this is the number before taxes get taken out, before health benefits, 401k contributions, all of that stuff. So it's pretty straightforward if you're getting a base salary. If you get a base salary, whatever that annual number is, that's what gets used. If you're hourly, or if you have commission or bonus income, these are all variable forms of pay. And in that case, it's not just, let's look at your most recent pay stub and see what it was. The underwriters are going to usually want to go back 2 years to see a history of how much this variable pay has been over time. Is there a trend? Is it increasing? Is it declining? What's the deal with it? And then do an average over those 2 years, in most cases, to calculate how much of this variable income can be factored in to show you can support these mortgage payments going forward. If you had one huge commission check, you wouldn't want to base buying a home on that one check, right? Assuming it's going to continue forever. So it's going to be the same way the underwriters are looking at it. The 2-year history is considered a long enough period of time to get a reasonable number to go off. Same thing if you're self-employed. In that case, you're going off the tax returns that were filed with the IRS in the most recent year and seeing how much income you reported to the IRS, what you wrote off for expenses, and then getting your gross income from that number. So again, if you're self-employed, it's not your top line revenue number, it's your taxable income after your write-offs. There are sometimes write-offs that you're taking that we can add back into that number. For example, the most common one is depreciation. So if you have some depreciation write-offs, typically that can be added back into your qualifying income. So a quick recap on how income gets calculated. For the liabilities, which goes on the top part of the equation, it's always liabilities divided by gross income to get your debt to income ratio. The liabilities are, number one, we take your credit report, which everyone has free access to on freecreditreport.com. You can get a copy of it once a year for free. So we're looking at the liabilities on your credit report, and we're not looking at the balances. We don't care if you owe $200,000 on a student loan. What we care more about is how much are your monthly payments on that student loan that you're required to make. Maybe you're on an income-based repayment plan and you're only paying $100 a month for a $200,000 loan. Whatever the case is, we're looking at that monthly amount. If the student loan's deferred, we're estimating an amount based on the balance and taking a percentage of that. Credit cards. If you owe $10,000 on a credit card, we're not hitting you for a $10,000 monthly expense. We're looking at the minimum required payment that you have to make, which is also reported right on your credit report. So, you could have a $10,000 credit card, but only be required to pay $300 a month. We would use that $300 a month as an expense. Also, things like unsecured personal loans. Maybe you consolidated some credit card debt in the past and you have a personal loan. Monthly payment on that gets factored in. Maybe car loans, that gets factored in. If you own any other homes and have mortgages on them, those mortgage payments get factored in. Things that do not show up on your credit report that would also get factored in would be like if you have child support expense, for example, we have to add that in as a monthly cost. Things that don't get factored in would include things like if you have your utility bills, how much you're spending on groceries for the month. A big one that sometimes is people's biggest expense that doesn't get factored in because it's not debt is childcare. So you could have a couple of kids in preschool or childcare and be paying thousands of dollars a month for it. We don't factor that into your debt to income ratio. So that's something we'll talk about in a few minutes as well. So to give you some real life examples as far as like how this gets calculated, and this can be done with somebody making millions of dollars a year to someone making $15,000 a year. It doesn't matter. It's all a percentage, right? So for this example, to keep the numbers easy, let's assume someone's making $120,000 a year for their base salary. Divide that by 12, and you're at $10,000 per month for your income. So gross income, $10,000 per month. Liabilities, maybe they have a $500 car loan, per month car loan, $100 in student loans. I'm just going to tally this up here. Say $300 a month in minimum payments on credit cards, and maybe $250 a month personal loan that they took out at one point. So total about $1,150 in expenses. So if we're calculating this person's current debt ratio, you're doing 1,150 divided by 10,000, and their current debt ratio is at 11.5%. So pretty low for the current expenses before you factor in their mortgage on their new home. So in this case, let's assume this person wants to get a home and they're going to be getting a conventional loan for it, where they can go up to 49% or 50% for a debt ratio. Now that's the maximum allowed by the program. They might not necessarily want to go that high. It's generally advised if you can keep your debt ratio, including your housing payment, under 35%. That's a pretty reasonable number. Again, you can get approved for more, but we would usually recommend people be a little more conservative. If we are factoring in all of their income in this ratio, they're going to want to keep that debt ratio a little lower. So if we know their max debt ratio is 50%, we know 50% of 10,000 is $5,000. They currently have $1,150 in expenses. So for their max debt ratio, including their housing payment, you do the $5,000 minus the $1,150 in current expenses, and that means they can afford a mortgage payment of $3,850. Because the $3,850 for their mortgage payment plus our $1,150 in current expenses would give them a 50% debt ratio, which we would run through the underwriting system and confirm it gets approved. And now we know that's how much they can afford for their new home. So with this client having a maximum payment of $3,850, say they're looking at homes, and in the area they're looking, property taxes average about $6,000 for the year. Home insurance might be another $1,500 for the year. So if you add up those numbers, divided by 12, it's about $625 in monthly expenses they're going to have for taxes and insurance, which means they have left over for their actual principal and interest payment about $3,225 per month. Using a rough estimate based on current rates and loan amounts and assuming a 30-year fixed mortgage, that would put them at a mortgage amount of about $460,000. Let's say these borrowers are lucky enough to be able to put 20% down. They've been saving up. They have the savings for it. So you're talking about a sales price of about $575, with them putting down $115,000 for the 20% down payment and getting that $460,000 loan. So now we can go back to those clients and explain to them that they're pre-approved for a sales price of about $575, and with 20% down, they'll be borrowing $460,000, and they'll have total payments, including taxes and home insurance, of about $3,850. So obviously there's some variables here. That's why a pre-approval amount is never an exact science. They might end up finding a home where the taxes are only $4,500 a year, and now they can actually afford a slightly higher sales price as well. Rates could change, so the qualifying rate on their mortgage could go up or down, which could affect their buying power as well. So there's different variables, and that's why it's always important to check before you make an offer on a home, just to make sure you have the most current information. Now, just because a buyer is pre-approved for a $3,850 a month payment doesn't mean they want a payment that high. Maybe they do have $2,000 a month in childcare expenses that we weren't factoring in. So we always have a conversation with the client about, great, here's how much you're pre-approved for, here's what your payment would be, but what's your personal budget? How much are you comfortable spending per month? Maybe they only want to be spending $2,500 a month. If that's the case, we'll do the math and figure out how much they want to be spending, what price range they want to be in to keep payments at the level that they're comfortable with, while also letting them know, keep payments at this level, here's the price point, but just so you have the info, your max pre-approval would have you going up to $575. So if something changes with your situation and you're more comfortable spending more, technically we can get you approved for this high of an amount. So not only is it important to know how all this gets calculated, but break down your personal budget, because you know your numbers better than us. You know what you're spending money on. You know if you're planning to have a baby next year and how much the childcare is going to cost for it, or maybe you're in a position where you don't need to get childcare. Whatever the case is, you know the numbers, you know your plans the best. So figure out your monthly budget and we'll tell you what the max is and also help you set a price range based on how much your personal budget is. That's what debt to income ratio is. That's why it's important. And I'm happy to help you figure out your personal debt to income ratio as well. Go onto my website, jasongr.com, click apply now to start filling out the info. No cost to you. We'll do a soft credit check of your credit report, which doesn't show up as an inquiry, doesn't show up as a credit check at all. And we'll be able to give you some numbers and get you on the right path to home ownership.